Hey guys, this is Sumner from landinvestor.co, and in this video we're calling it Land Investing 101. We're going to break down exactly everything you need to know to get started in land investing. We built out an entire presentation, and it's really my hope that if you're just getting started, going through this video is going to teach you the fundamentals. This is the same 7-step framework that we've used to sell over $3 million worth of land in the last 2 years, as well as build up our owner finance portfolio to $25,000 a month. We cover a lot of good nuggets from start to finish, so be sure to stick around for the entire video. Without further ado, we're going to hop on the computer and go through this presentation together. All right, my good friends, here we are, Land Investing 101. Everything you need to know about getting started in land investing. This is like a quasi crash course / MBA in land investing. And we're going to distill this here in I call it about 15 minutes or so. Before we dive into this video, if you guys are looking to start a land investing business or want more land investing content, be sure to hit the subscribe button. And for this video, you're going to want to stick to the very end. There's a lot of moving parts to land investing. I always tell people, it's simple. It's not easy, but it is simple. But within some of that simplicity, there are some subtle intricacies that we're going to cover here that I want to make sure you guys stick around for. So let's dive into it. Who the heck is Sumner Healey? Why am I even qualified to talk about land investing? I started a company called thelandpioneer.com back in 2019. You guys can head over there and go take a look at us. Over 408 land deals done. Actually, that number is a little bit behind the times. I think we're probably closer to like 420, 425. In 2021, we did $1.6 million in sales. So far, January through September of this year, what 1.647843. So it looks like we're on track to cross $2 million in sales this year. The biggest difference between last year and this year, 2021, our business was primarily made up of very small deals. So we did over 220 deals, most of those being under $10,000. And then the vast majority of our deals were also done via owner financing. Come to 2022, it's inverse. A lot of our properties are in like that $20,000 to $75,000 sales price range. And the vast majority of our properties are being sold for cash. We still get a few owner finance sales every month, but it makes up a very, very small fraction. About 20% of the properties we sell are actually on owner financing terms. But over the last 16 months, I've been able to build a note income from owner financing sales exceeding $25,000 a month, which is proof that literally anyone could go and do that in a year and a half. I think it's a pretty worthwhile way to spend a year and a half of your life to build something that can crank out $25K just in passive income. And then our business outside of that in terms of cash sales does many multiples of that. And I say all this to A, give credibility, but B, show you guys what's possible, right? I started in 2019. I haven't been doing this for decades. I've just worked really, really diligently and become obsessed with land investing. I can say that unequivocally, I am obsessed. And that's why I make videos talking about it. We've got a team of 8 employees all overseas. More on that in future videos in terms of why we exclusively hire overseas, at least for the time being. We've had US-based employees and overseas-based employees. Time and time again, our overseas employees just beat out the folks that we were hiring here in the US. Launched landinvestor.co to not only help teach the mechanics of land investing, but more importantly, how to turn it into a scalable business, which helps buy back your time. 2 things here. 1, I am not the first person to create a course around land investing. There are tons of folks, well, maybe not tons, but I would say 5 or 6 other course providers out there that have been making courses around land investing for years. The biggest gap that I saw, and the problem that I saw with these courses is, yes, they teach you the mechanics of land investing, the technicalities of land investing, but no, they don't teach you how to build a land investing business. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm more interested in building a sustainable business that has repeatable processes that can be delegated and automated. That way I can step out of the day-to-day and go focus on other things that might be calling my attention, right? And that's how I was able to start the landinvestor.co, is because I had built a land investing business that pretty much scaled myself out of it. And out of the dozens of coaching calls that we've had since launching landinvestor.co back in August 31st of 2022, so literally less than a month ago, every single person that has gotten on those calls, there's been a central theme, or almost every single person, there's been a central theme, which is, hey, Sumner, I want to make good money, but really what I want is to buy back my time. And some of these people are high-paid W-2 employees making a couple $100,000 a year, but they don't have their time. And this is one of the beautiful things about this business, because it's such a streamlined, repeatable process that we use to buy land, to market land, and to sell land. You can actually go and coach people and train them to go and fill in those gaps. Like one big conveyor belt is how we teach it. And then you just need people standing in line within that conveyor belt to build something that works like an automated machine. And that's what I'm most interested in. So our program, Land Investing Accelerator program, that goes over the technicalities of land investing, as well as how to build it, a business around it, although this is not a sales pitch about that. So we'll move on. Why is there an opportunity in flipping land? This is such an important question, I believe, because so many people kind of gloss over this and just want to go and tell you, I bought this property for $10,000 and sold it for $30,000. But why is there a repeatable opportunity here that hundreds of people are out here in the United States making money through a system, potentially even thousands of people? Why is there an opportunity here? Well, let's cover that. I think in order to have belief in what's possible, you first have to understand, well, why is it even possible, right? So we'll go over that. So the very first thing is low intrinsic value for most property owners. So most folks that own a piece of land, they typically aren't using it frequently. In fact, maybe they haven't seen it in a few decades, or on top of that, maybe they live in an entirely different state where they inherited the land. There's a list of reasons as to why that is. But needless to say, if you haven't seen a property in a couple of decades, or maybe you haven't seen it ever, which we hear pretty commonly from a lot of owners, there's going to be a very low attachment. It's very low intrinsic value. Where it's very different if you own a house that you currently live in, there's very high intrinsic value. Or if you live in a house or there was a house that you used to live in, there's a lot of memories and there's kind of a charm tied into that. So you have more of an attachment to it. Or if you have a house that you're renting out to a family currently and you're getting rental income from it, well, you have attachment to the rental income and maybe you want to see the family have a nice house to live in. So there's a lot more of an emotional tie, a lot more of an emotional connection. A lot of times these people don't even know how to go and find the properties, right? Like, I don't know how to use coordinates. How do I get to this land? We hear this time and time again. Land is just this weird intersection in real estate where it's so different than all the other asset classes in real estate that most people they're just confused by it, and they typically have very little interest in it. Even for folks that have previously bought the property 20, 30 years ago, maybe they thought they were going to build a house on it, but life happened, they moved on, they moved to a different state, and there's just less of a big tie or connection to it. And so that means when you're coming to the negotiating table, there's a lot more leeway in terms of what they're willing to accept. And on top of that, land is a very illiquid asset, right? And it's an asset that can be typically hard to sell, or especially hard to sell quickly. And so if you're coming to the table and you're talking to someone about a piece of property that they haven't seen in 20 years, and they know it's hard to sell, your offer all of a sudden looks really, really appealing. It's the same thing if you go and knock on someone's door and you say, hey, there's that old bike with cobwebs in your garage. I'll give you $10 for it. Would you take it? They might have paid $200 for that bike 30 years ago, but for them, they haven't ridden it in years. They know if they go put it up on Facebook Marketplace, it's going to be hard to sell. So there's just this very low intrinsic value for most owners. Now, of course, there's people that fall outside of that exception, but I would say that's more of the norm than an outlier type situation. Now, in a situation that's going to have high intrinsic value, if someone just bought the property a year ago or 2 years ago, there's going to be a lot more of an emotional connection. So typically when we're looking to build out our campaigns, we're typically going after folks that have owned the property for a set amount of time, because we understand that there's been some time for that to season. So there's a lot higher of a likelihood that we can make a deal happen. The next thing is there's misaligned incentives for realtors. So there might be some realtors watching this video, and there's no offense taken, hopefully, but this is just an objective fact. A realtor can go and sell a house for, call it $500,000. They'll make 3 points on it, so they make 15 grand on that sale. And there is a piece of vacant land that they also have listed in the same county, the same city, and they have it listed at 100 grand. And let's say their commission on it is, I don't know, anywhere between 5 to 10%. Let's take it in between the middle, 7.5%. So a $7,500 commission. That house might sell in 30 days. That piece of land might sell in 300 days, 600 days, 400 days, and their commission's lower. So there's misaligned incentives to where, whose call are they going to take? A buyer for the house or a buyer for the property? Who are they going to do a showing for? A showing for the house or a showing for the property? Which one are they going to go take pictures of, the house or the property? So a realtor typically only has so much time on their plate. And so they're going to, almost in every single case, going to gravitate towards selling the single family house because it'll sell faster and they'll have a bigger commission on it than a piece of vacant land. Now, there are some folks out there that are realtors that just specialize in vacant land. They are definitely the exception, not the rule. The next thing is land is very hard to price. There's disparate data, and really just the subjective nature of land makes it really, really difficult to apply a price to it. You also are going to have just a big variation in terms of how the land sits, right? You might have a 40-acre property that has 30 trees on it and a river in the back, and the adjacent property has no trees, no river, and a small hill on it. What's the difference in value there? There's there's almost no objective way to figure that out. What we mean by disparate data is there's not one central uniform place to go and get real estate data on land. It's spread all over the internet. It's very discombobulated, and you're typically working with very limited data sets, as in you don't really know what it sold for or when it sold. Some of the stuff's on the MLS, some of the stuff's not on the MLS. And so one of the ways that we are able to bring value to this game is by figuring out how to price properties. And we'll touch on that in a future video. So disparate data, there's a subjective nature of land just in terms of you looking at a property and someone says, oh, I like the one with the trees, it's worth more. Or someone says, I like the one without trees, it's worth less. Hard to really say what it's worth at that point. The third or fourth point rather is low competition. Go into any RIA meeting or any real estate meetup, I could almost guarantee you that you won't meet a single person that's in the land investing niche. It's not talked about. There's very few educators in the space. The ones that are in the space, in my opinion, are preaching outdated education methods. There's just not a lot of folks that are in this game because there's just not a lot of material around how to get involved. So I think it's just ultimately very, very low competition in terms of folks that are actually participating in the land investing community at a high level. And that makes, like any marketplace, makes it so there's a much easier way to get your foot in, and there's just more opportunity because of that. And the last point is lack of financing for buyers. So one thing that you'll notice is most land investors are going to be working within a kind of a tight range for the properties that they sell. You're typically not going to see land investors selling a $20 million piece of land. You're typically also not going to see land investors making a business out of selling $500 pieces of land. Typically, you're going to see about 10,000, about 150,000 will be pretty consistent for most investors in the space. And at that price point, most institutional banks aren't going to lend on it. And that can be really, really difficult because you have a buyer that could afford the monthly payment, but they don't have all the liquidity to buy the land. So what we do in that case is we offer owner financing. So they can put a down payment, whether it's 10%, 20%, 30% of the purchase price, make monthly payments. You can charge interest. And so there's a big opportunity to kind of play the role of the bank. And what that allows us to do is A, sell the property for more, but B, it allows us to sell our property faster because where other listings aren't offering financing, we are. Right. And again, we are so competitive with our cash prices that most folks in the current environment that we're in, where there is liquidity out there, they want to buy our properties cash, but we always offer it as an option. And it really does help us sell through much faster than other folks. It also allows us to collect that monthly income. And for the vast majority of our financing arrangements, we use what's known as a contract for deed. And that means that we hold title to the property until it's actually paid off. So in the event that we have to default on someone because they stop making payments, we actually don't need to go through the foreclosure process. It makes it a very safe transaction for you as the owner when financing the property. So what type of returns can we expect in the land business? The recording on this is Friday, the 23rd of September. These are actually 3 texts I got today. 3 of our coaching clients that are in the Land Investing Accelerator program just happened to send these to me today. So we're really good to throw in here. And this is a really honest kind of example of what you could expect in this business in terms of, these are all cash sales in terms of what you could expect for mid-tier to larger cash sales. This last one here is a little bit larger. One of our students, Mike, he bought and sold this property out in Coconino County, Arizona, bought for $14,000, sold for $40,000 in a day, which is incredible. And then he just closed on a property up in Oregon, in Lapine, Oregon. So it's just south of Bend, bought for $32,000, is listed for $90,000. Hasn't sold yet, but that'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. That would be a slam dunk deal if that does sell at 90. And then we got Ryland over here. So $9,200 acquisition price, $600 in closing fees, all in at $9,800, listed on Facebook, put under contract in 2 weeks for $29,000. Property closed 2 weeks later. That's a $19,200 profit in 4 weeks. And then Chris, this is his best deal to date, was a buy for $46,000. That's all in with photos, escrow, and closing costs. And he sold it for $110,000. It's on the market for 13 days. So that last deal, I will say, is much more of an outlier. Those are the kinds of deals that if you're marketing consistently and you're doing consistent business, you'll get anywhere between 2 to 5 of those kind of bigger grand slam type deals in your business every year. We just sold a property last Friday, so exactly a week ago, that we bought for $80,000, sold it for $160,000, and that sold in less than 10 days. So those kinds of deals do come along. I would say these first two examples here from Chris and Rylan are much more common. So typically when we're looking at cash sales, we're typically going to see anywhere between 100 to 200% returns for cash sales. One of the truths about land investing though is as you go up into a higher price point, typically your ROI is going to be less. So if you're selling, in the case of the example I just brought up, a property for $80,000 selling to $160,000, that 100% spread is pretty typical. It's going to be less typical to go buy that $80,000 property and sell it for a 3x spread or a 4x spread. Now, as you go down market and you're working on cheaper properties, the opposite is true. So buying a $1,000 property is not uncommon to sell it cash for $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. That happens all the time. One of the things that you'll learn about this business though is that it takes the same amount of time to do small deals as it takes to do big deals. So even though your ROI is lower, most folks are going to go up market just because it's a lot more effective with how you're using your time. Now, when it comes to the owner financing side of things, I will say the spread, the difference there can be much wider. We see is anywhere from like 300 to 1,500%. It's really all over the map. I've seen deals that are even higher than 1,500%. One of the things about the owner financing stuff though is when it comes to those kinds of properties, most folks like myself or the students that are in our program, they'll accept a lower overall ROI if they can get their full basis back in the down payment. What I mean by that, let's say you bought a property for $10,000. Someone says, hey, I want to buy the property from you on owner financing terms for $30,000. They might accept that deal with a stipulation that they're getting a $10,000 down payment. So then they can go take that $10,000 and recycle it into new deals. We see that being pretty typical where folks will accept a lower return in situations like that. Or on the flip side, if you're going to get a much lower down payment, you're typically going to need a larger ROI to justify that smaller down payment. Same is true here as you're working on smaller deals. You're going to see much bigger spreads when owner financing than when you're working with bigger deals. That's just a truism across this whole entire business. And this is me repeating everything I just said to you. So we'll move on from that. Let's go over the 7-step land investing framework. Boy, oh boy, I wish someone would have taught me this when I was first getting started and put it in such a clear and concise fashion. So what we're going to do here is break down every single one of these steps. What we've got here is market research, aggregate data, pricing offers, mailing offers, acquisitions, marketing, and dispositions. This is the business. If anyone tells you otherwise, this is really it. This is what the business is comprised of. The only caveat here that you could slide in or slide out is how you're funding your deals. And that's something that we could discuss on at a later date. There's some different solutions in terms of how you can do that. You could be self-funding, you could have partners, or for example, if you go through our Land Investing Accelerator program, we've actually partnered up with a deal funding company that will fund our students' deals. There's a lot of opportunities out there in terms of how you can do that. I don't really think this is a huge thing to get hung up on. It's a very solvable problem. That's why we have not made it the 8th step, although it is an important piece of how you make this all work. All right, let's discuss market research. In my opinion, this is the most important component. Most people get this part terribly wrong. They just don't understand that really every other result in your business is going to cascade down from the decisions that you make in terms of what markets you're choosing to work in. Not all markets are created equal. It's really, really important that you understand that some markets are going to have booming land demand and properties will sell quickly and you'll be able to actually go and get deals. So markets come in all different shapes and sizes. And what we need to do is go and find what we call the Goldilocks markets. These are markets that aren't too hot, they're not too cold, they're just right. And the reason we don't want them too hot is those can be hard to buy land in. We don't want them too cold because they can be hard to sell land in. And the reason we want them not too hot or not too cold is because the markets that are too hot, yeah, you could sell them quickly, but it's going to be really difficult to buy them in. And if it's too cold, you can buy them easily, but it's going to be really hard to sell them. We want those markets that are right in the sweet spot where properties are selling quickly, but we can still actually go and acquire land. We typically like to see markets that are selling through 15 to 40 properties per month. Ideal price point for our business and other students that have gone through a program is about $20,000 to $150,000 for a sales price. It'll range a little bit. There's going to be exceptions to that rule, but that's been pretty darn consistent. As you go above $150,000, the owners of those properties are much more sophisticated. There is a lot more intrinsic value. Those properties are just inherently more valuable, obviously. And so those properties can be really, really difficult to go and acquire. They can be done, but it is difficult. Now, as you go down market, those properties are really easy to buy. They're a little more difficult to sell, and you're typically working with a much less educated end user in terms of a buyer, which can cause all sorts of different problems for you. So 20,000 to 150,000 is going to be our sweet spot for where we're buying. Now, the next point is aggregating data. So lots of different data providers out there. Truth be told, they all come from the same source. Doesn't matter if you're using Data Tree or if you're using fill in the blank, they all come from the county assessor's office. So all those records are going to be aggregated from the same place. Now, there can be differences in between the quality that you're getting. Some are going to aggregate that data more frequently, and their systems are just going to be better at actually presenting that information to you. They're going to add more filters in terms of how you can interpret that data. And really, that's why we use Data Tree. I've used a whole plethora of different options out there. Data Tree, time and time again, in terms of quality, price, and the filters that we get to use in there's just nothing quite on the same level as it. And typically we want to whittle down our data set to meet our search criteria, right? So it's going to break down based on acreage or assessed value, last sale date, in-state, out-of-state owner, on and on and on again. We typically aren't just going to go and pull data for an entire area and just go mail that. We're going to want to get very precise with our data set because it's going to make it a lot easier to price that data. And if you're working on a budget, it'll allow you to pull what might be the most motivated list of potential owners. So let's talk about pricing offers. There's 3 different offer types we use in our business, and really this is true for pretty much every other land investor out there. It's going to be a blind offer, and that's just an offer that has a blind price attached to it. So you'll go and price it on the front end when you're doing your research and say, okay, we're going to offer $40,000. You'll put that on the letter. The beautiful thing about a blind offer is it's going to include a purchase agreement with it. So that purchase agreement gives the seller the ability to sign it and then actually grant you the right to go buy the property without ever speaking to you. That does happen. The next is going to be a range offer. There's not going to be a purchase agreement here. It's going to say, hey, we can pay you between $20,000 and $40,000 for your property. Give us a call so we can make a deal. And the third is a neutral letter, which is just going to say, hey, we want to buy your property. We're not quite sure what price it is. Give us a call, and you can kind of take it from there. So there's really no hard, fast rule for pricing percentages. Some people talk about, oh yeah, we only offer 30% of retail value or 20%. It's all BS. That's a total, it's not a lie, but it's not accurate, right? There's so many other variables that you have to take into account. It depends, A, on your business model, and it depends on what market you're working in, right? If you're working in a really, really hot market, you're not going to be able to get away offering that 30%. If you're working in a market that's a lot cooler, you probably shouldn't be offering 50% or 60%. And it's really going to dictate too how quickly you can sell that property, right? If I know I can sell a property in 4 weeks or less, for example, and I can buy it for $100,000 and sell it for $180,000, I'll pretty much do that deal all day long. But if I was following the generic advice of only offering 30% or 40%, then I'm going to come along and offer that property that's worth $180,000. I'll come along and offer, whatever that math is, $45,000, $50,000 for that property. It's just absurd. So I think you really need to get granular in terms of figuring out where you're working and what you can actually be offering. You always want to be finding that middle ground where it's like, it works for your business, but it's still fair. You typically don't want to be outrageous or outlandish with your offers. Yes, you can occasionally get deals like that, but A, it's going to take a lot of marketing, and B, I find that you're going to have a lack of consistency in terms of deal flow. I would rather take a lower ROI on some deals, but just do more deals. That's my specific business model. Totally up to you though. In my experience, deals are truly done on the phone. Therefore, the goal of your marketing is to get the phone to ring, right? We want to be accurate with our pricing. We want to try to be as accurate as we possibly can, but we have to understand that sometimes we're not going to hit it right. Sometimes we're going to misprice offers. We're going to be too high. We're going to be too low. That's okay. And on the flip side, some folks can get stuck in this analysis paralysis phase where they just feel like, oh, my mailer's not perfect. It's not done yet. I'm still working on it. And that's really the enemy here, right? What we want to do is get the mail out, get it out in a high volume, high quantity, get the phone to ring, and then work the deals from there. Again, sometimes people will just occasionally go and sign that blind offer, but those are very rare. Those are like the low-hanging fruits. If you're just relying off those deals, you're missing out on a plethora of other deals that you could be doing by getting on the phone and actually working those deals. So let's talk about mailing offers. So here's our general letter format. You guys can copy this. This is what we would use for really all of our offers. This would be like the front page for a blind offer. You could use this for a range offer. You could use this for a neutral letter. And it's just going to give a breakdown on why we're like what property we're talking about, who we are, benefits of selling with us, opposed to using an agent, instructions on how they get in touch with you, yada, yada, yada. And we use Rocket Print and Mail for all of our mailing. We've actually got some discounted pricing. If you guys want to take advantage of that, you can do so. That's what we found to be the best, just in terms of A, the fastest, and B, they're the cheapest. Now, one of the caveats is you typically have to buy in bulk with them. You can buy in a very small increment of 5,000 letters up front, and you'll just pay for the printing costs, and then you'll pay for the postage later. And that's what we've done, and it allows you to secure a much lower rate than what you're going to get with other mail houses. I think we spend about 50 cents per letter currently, which is pretty darn good, because a lot of other providers are 55 cents, 60 cents, 65 cents. And like I said, they're very quick in terms of getting those delivered. Now let's talk about acquisitions. This is where deals are made. So it comes back to getting sellers on the phone, right? Acquisitions is going to come down to having conversations with sellers. Don't be afraid to negotiate the correct price when you're on the phone with someone. It's okay if you made a mistake on your previous price. You can go back to the drawing board and explain, hey, this is why we have to offer X, Y, and Z. My team does it all the time because we make mistakes. And sometimes we just don't know that the property has an old trailer on it, or the property has was wooded but has been cleared, or on and on and on again. There's so many different situations where we just can't predict the kind of property condition it's in. On and on and on again. There's just so many situations where we can't predict the condition of that property until someone actually calls us in and we're doing our due diligence on that specific lot. So our belief here is that customer service over sales. This is not like a hardcore sales role. Really what you want to do is serve the customer, be kind, answer any questions they might have about the selling process, field some questions, ask them some questions. And then one of the only salesy things that we do in our business is we follow up until we get a yes or a no. So we take that customer service approach, but we are going to follow up with you consistently until you say yes or until you say no. If they reached out, in my opinion, there's some level of motivation there. You need to pursue that until you get that yes or a no. And don't be deterred. If someone says, hey, not right now, or they don't call you back for a few weeks, that's okay. The sales cycle in this business can take months to close a deal. This is totally normal. Some people are going to reach out and say, yes, I'm ready right now. Some people are going to reach out and say, maybe. And some people are going to reach out and say, yes, I'm ready right now, then fall off the face of the earth. Then you get a hold of them in 90 days or 120 days. And that's totally normal. That's why we want to continue following up. So marketing, this is where most folks go wrong in this business. For every single property, we're going to get drone photos, drone videos, use words to paint a picture, but convey a story about the property. We want to inspire someone as to why they should buy this property, why it's a great property. There's a lot that we had sold out in LA County. It's got beautiful images. It shows the surrounding area. It has the lot lines for the property. And then last but not least, in that listing description, we want to answer all questions in the listing. So if someone says, hey, can I have a mobile home on the property? That should be answered in the listing. If someone says, hey, can I build a tiny home? That should be answered. So it's really important that you're kind of going through a story, then answer all of the literal facts about the property, have great drone photos, and we always include a drone video. One of the cool things that we do with the drone videos too is we use it as a way to get people to opt into our system. So if they see our listing on fill in the blank website, they'll go and look at it and it'll say, hey, reach out to us for the drone video. They'll fill out a form, reach out to us. Our team will send that drone video. So it's a good way to add some additional value to them by having the drone video. It's a great way for us to collect their information so we can continue to follow up with them. I'm a believer that you need to utilize all marketing channels. I see a lot of folks in this business that are saying, hey, I'm just using Facebook. I don't want to spend money on land.com or landflip. I don't think that's the right way you should be looking at things. You should be looking at things that everything in this business should have a true return on it. If it doesn't, obviously cut it out. But if you actually go and crunch the numbers on a land.com or a land flip or a flat fee MLS, there's a real return in terms of what you can expect from investing into those channels. Almost every other business is going to use some kind of paid marketing for customer acquisition. We're going to do the same thing in this business. I don't think you should just be relying on free channels. So for us, we use land.com. We use our personal website, which we get a good amount of leads from that every single month. We use flat fee MLS providers. We use land flip, and I believe that's it as of right now, as well as TikTok and Instagram, which they generate some leads for us as well. So those are platforms that we're currently using. I could make a whole separate video in terms of why we don't use Facebook, but I'll spare you guys all that for now. So let's talk about dispositions. So this is actually how we sell the property again, customer service over sales. That's always going to be our agenda, really, for everything in this business. The goal here is get prospects on the phone. You're going to get a lot of folks that are saying, hey, I want to buy this property, but they'll just fill out a form. They won't call you. So you've got to pick up the phone and proactively call them. And this is the same thing with following up. You want to follow up continuously until you get some kind of response in terms of what they're looking to do. Now, we're not going to be as aggressive with our follow-up here as we might be with sellers, but if someone says, hey, I'm going to make a decision on the 19th, you can guarantee that we're going to follow up on the 18th before that actual line in the sand and continue following up from there. So it's just really important that you're getting some feedback in terms of the timeline that these potential buyers are working in, and then following up with in accordance to that. One of the things that we use in our business, this is potentially the only salesy thing that we do, is what we call FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You want to paint some hesitation in terms of that there's urgency around this property selling. There's a lot of interest. It's priced so low. It's such a great deal. It's so beautiful. We will touch on that. It's probably the one salesy thing that we will do in this business. But other than that, it's really all just customer service and answering very tactical questions in terms of what people can and can't do on the property. Nurture your leads. There's a real buyer's journey that these potential prospects are going to go through. It's really important that you're nurturing them through every single cycle. So when someone reaches out, they're a lead, right? And then you want to take them down that customer journey until you kind of get in a fork in the road that says, hey, yes, they're going to buy. Okay, we'll move them over into that cycle of the buyer's journey. Or no, they're not going to buy, so then we'll go and nurture them in a different kind of follow-up cadence. This is something that's done within your CRM. We use Follow Up Boss, and so we have all of the buyers' kind of personas broken down, as well as where they're at in that buyer's journey. And then we'll just kind of give them follow-up with in accordance to where they're at in that journey. It's really important to understand that when someone reaches out, they're not always going to be the same position as the person that reached out yesterday. Everyone's going to be at a different part in their journey, and you need to treat them in accordance to where they're at. Can I start on a budget? Man, this is such a common question. The answer is yes. I started with a measly $9,000 and scaled it up from there. So yes, you can certainly do it. We've had folks that have started with $10,000. That's kind of the line in the sand, in my opinion. I think $10,000 is about as low as you'd want to go. But it certainly is possible if you're willing to reinvest your profits and kind of keep on scaling up from there, which is exactly what I did. It is possible. One of the cool things about the program that we put together is it does give you access to our funding partner. So that means that you can really dictate all of your funds to go towards marketing, opposed to going towards marketing and property acquisition, that's where you can run into some trouble with starting with $9,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 even, is if you're trying to divvy up those funds to cover acquisitions as well as your marketing, you can certainly run into some problems, especially in regard to cash flow, right? You might have a really good portfolio of properties that are listed, but they don't sell 1 month, and then you don't have money for marketing. It can make it really tricky to manage your cash flow. So we do recommend using some kind of funding partner once you start generating quality deals. That's something that our program gives you access to. How long to go full-time in this business? We've had clients go full-time in 90 days. That's certainly not the norm. I'd say the average is closer to 12 months. Many of the folks in the Land Investing Accelerator program are doing $50,000 a month, plus some beyond even $70,000 a month within 12 to 16 months of going through the program. So you can scale up in this business pretty darn quickly, but like anything in life, how hard are you willing to work? Is this something that you really want? If yes, then you can make magic happen. And really what I've seen is the best are willing to reinvest. So even though they might be cranking out $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a month, they're reinvesting that for future growth. The best that I've seen are willing to do that for the first year or two to really set themselves up. How do I get started? One of the things that we're offering here is a free 15-minute land investing strategy call with yours truly. So if you guys want to talk about this more, if you guys enjoyed this video, you want to pick my brain about land investing or our program, you can actually go to this link here or head on over to landinvestor.co. You can also book a call on there. We are doing limited spots for this, so I'm not sure when you guys are going to be watching this video. You can go and check that link and see if there's any availability. And we'd love to carve out some time to speak with you guys. And I appreciate you for watching this video, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.